Actually, it was a landing and not a crash.
Oh.
So there wasn't any debris. But what there was, and this is confirmed in a file on the incident that the Ministry of Defense has now declassified and released, what there was, as well as those burn marks and scorch marks on the trees, there were levels of radioactivity that seemed significantly higher than the average background levels.
Welcome back to Kesha and the Creepies. Today we welcome Nick Pope. Thank you so much for coming on my podcast.
Hi there.
Now, I don't know how to pronounce this correctly, so I'm going to just stab at it. A ufologist?
Yes, although I guess one who did this not as a hobby, but as a government job. So I don't really call myself a ufologist as opposed to a government official who happened to be lucky enough to be given this amazing real-life X-Files gig.
Do you think that we're in the age of potential soon disclosure of this information? Or do you think every 10 years people think it's coming and it just doesn't actually get disclosed from the government?
I think we're further forward than we've ever been. And I think this Senate Intelligence Committee initiative is going to certainly move things forward again. But whether we cross the line, I mean, the UFO community have this concept of disclosure with a big D.
Yeah.
And in their mind's eye, it's the president going on the evening news at prime time saying, my fellow Americans, people of the world, we're not alone. My take is it might not quite go down that way. It might be a little bit more subtle. And I think that's what we're seeing now. But there are congressional briefings going on behind the scenes. People like Marco Rubio have gone on the record to say, look, I'd rather this was aliens, because if it's Russia or China, we're in big trouble. They've made a quantum leap.
So interesting. And I did see like Trump had let a few things slide that were just questionable comments about, you know, extraterrestrials or UFOs and his obsession with the Space Force. I can't help but think, like, why would you be so obsessed if there wasn't something else here? And the former Israeli space security chief, Hayam Eshed, I read what he had said about how we've been in contact with extraterrestrials and we have people on Mars in an underground bunker that have relationships with extraterrestrials. Like, how legit do you think that is?
Well, that story really struck me as being far out. Having said that, the guy is who he says he is. He did what he said he did in the Israeli space program. So he's certainly someone who, if this sort of thing is out there, as he says, he is someone who would know. I think there are some pieces of that particular puzzle that we don't yet have. But, you know, if any of this was happening in isolation, I think you could write one or two of these things off. But it's more than that. I mean, for example, the Harvard professor, Avi Loeb, who spoke about this strange-shaped object that came through our solar system recently, Oumuamua. And then a former CIA director, John Brennan, he gave an interview where he started suddenly talking about something that might constitute a different form of life. And when all these people, from whether they're CIA people or space scientists or professors, government officials, intelligence community people whoever they are, when they all come out with broadly the same sort of thing, all pointing the same direction, it does make me wonder whether there isn't some sort of orchestrated campaign here to, well, you tell them this, I'll tell them that, and then before we know it, we'll be over that line and we'll have had disclosure.
Do you have a favorite conspiracy theory? And do you have a least favorite one that like drives you nuts?
I think my least favorite is that we didn't get to the moon, because I've met at least one of the astronauts who did go there, Edgar Mitchell. And all these people, I think, are very brave, truthful, honorable people. And the skills of the scientists and the engineers, I think it's disparaging to those people, their ability, their bravery, to say that we didn't go. And I think there's a whole bunch of really, really good evidence to say that we did, including the moon rocks, which are different in terms of isotopic ratios and things. And heck, they even left a giant mirror on the moon so that you can fire a laser at it and measure the distance that, because of the time it takes the light to come back.
Wait, what? We left a mirror on the moon to shoot lasers at?
Yes. I think it's technically called the laser reflector experiment or something like that. But it is basically a mirror. We left a mirror on the moon. And
wow.
Observatories, anyone that's got a sufficiently powerful and accurate laser can fire it. And obviously it wouldn't come back if we didn't go up there and leave the thing there in the first place. But that's my least favorite.
What are we shooting lasers at it for?
Firstly, one of the big reasons is to measure down to the sort of nanomillimeter the distance between the Earth and the moon. And that distance is changing ever so slightly. Every year, the moon drifts a little bit further away from the Earth. And scientists like to measure those sorts of things. So that's one reason. But if I'm being honest, I honestly think one of the other reasons
be honest.
Is just to prove that they went there in the first place.
To hear the entire podcast, listen and follow Kesha and the Creepies on iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts.